Welcome to KJR SummaryCast, audio summaries of peer-reviewed articles published in the Korean Journal of Radiology. Designed to enhance reader convenience and the overall KJR experience, SummaryCast provides conversational audio overviews for time-constrained listeners and mobile-friendly learning. This recording was created using a combination of AI tools with oversight from the KJR editorial team or the article's authors, including necessary edits and corrections. For the most accurate and complete information, we encourage you to also read the original published article.
Welcome back to SummaryCast. Today we're looking at a comprehensive review that challenges a one-size-fits-all approach to a major global health issue.
We are. The paper is titled Breast Cancer Screening in Asian Countries, Epidemiology, Screening Practices, Outcomes, Challenges, and Future Directions. It's from the Korean Journal of Radiology, slated for a 2025 issue.
And it makes a compelling case right from the start. The core argument is that breast cancer in Asian populations is, in many ways, a different disease compared to what's seen in Western populations.
Exactly. It's not just about prevalence, but about the fundamental epidemiology. In 2022, nearly 2.3 million new cases of breast cancer were reported globally, and about 43% of those were in Asia.
But the incidence rate itself, the Age Standardized Incidence Rate, or ASIR, is actually lower in Asia than anywhere else. The paper puts Asia's ASIR at 34.3 per 100,000.
Right. Compare that to North America, which is up at 95.1. So on the surface, it looks like less of a problem.
But that's where it gets complicated. The paper zeroes in on the mortality to incidence ratio. Define that for us.
It's a rough measure of how deadly a cancer is among those diagnosed. You take the number of deaths and divide it by the number of new cases. Globally, that ratio for breast cancer is about 0.28.
And in Asia?
It's 0.32, second highest in the world. So even though the incidence is lower, the outcomes are disproportionately worse.
That's a significant disparity. And the paper suggests this isn't just about access to care, but also about the biology of the disease in this population.
It does, and a huge piece of that puzzle is the age of onset. In Western populations, breast cancer incidence typically peaks in women aged 60 to 70.
But in Asian women, the peak is much earlier, hitting hardest between ages 40 and 50.
Much, much earlier, yes. The paper notes, for example, that in Singapore, over 20% of cases are diagnosed in women aged 40 to 49, and in one study from India, about 17% of cases were in women aged 45 or younger.
That has massive implications for screening. Most Western guidelines have historically centered on starting screening at age 50.
Precisely. And if your peak incidence is at 45, a guideline that starts at 50 is missing the window where it could do the most good. This leads directly into the central challenge of the paper. How do you screen a population that's younger and has a different breast tissue composition?
You're talking about breast density.
Exactly. The paper heavily emphasizes this. Younger women naturally have denser breasts, and Asian women have a higher prevalence of dense tissue even as they age. One study cited found that more than 70% of Korean women in their 40s had dense breasts.
And dense tissue on a mammogram can mask cancers, reducing the sensitivity of the exam. The paper quantifies this, saying it can drop sensitivity to as low as 30 to 48%.
Which makes standard mammogram a much less effective tool for this specific demographic. It's a huge problem. You have national screening programs, but the primary tool is partially blunted.
So, how are different Asian countries grappling with this? The paper includes a really useful table, Table 2, laying out the national guidelines.
It's a fascinating patchwork. You see some countries with well-established, population-based programs like Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan. They've had these since the early 2000s.
And their start ages reflect that earlier onset. South Korea and Japan both recommend starting biennial mammography at age 40.
Taiwan is also 40. Singapore is a bit more nuanced. It recommends biennial screening for the 50 to 69 age group, but encourages women aged 40 to 49 to discuss annual screening with their providers.
So they acknowledge the issue but handle it differently. What about a country like China?
China uses opportunistic screening. The consensus there recommends mammography and/or breast ultrasound for women aged 40 to 69.
The and/or ultrasound is a key detail. It's an admission that mammography alone might not be sufficient.
It is, and it sets up the next major section of the review, the role of supplemental screening. If mammogram has limitations, what else can be done?
Let's start with digital breast tomosynthesis, or DBT.
Right. DBT is often used in the West, but the paper notes its use in Asia has been more for diagnostic workups rather than primary screening, mostly due to cost and availability.
But there are studies looking at its screening performance. What did they find?
A study in Taiwan was quite positive. After implementing DBT, the cancer detection rate, or CDR, increased from around 6 to 8 per thousand screens to 8.5 to 11.4 per thousand screens. That's a mean increase of over 30%.
A non-trivial jump. Did it reduce recall rates?
Yes, it did. A 17.8% reduction in recalls. A Japanese study also found lower recall rates with DBT compared to 2D mammography, though the cancer detection rate was similar in their cohort.
But there's a catch, isn't there? What happens when you combine DBT with ultrasound, which is already being considered as a supplement?
That's the critical question a couple of Korean studies tackled. One compared mammography plus ultrasound to DBT plus ultrasound in women with dense breasts.
And the result?
The cancer detection rates were comparable. 10.4 per 1,000 for the DBT group versus 9.8 per 1,000 for the mammography group. Not a statistically significant difference.
But the recall rate was significantly higher in the DBT plus ultrasound group. Yikes.
It was. 24.8% versus 16.9%. The conclusion was that if you're already doing a concurrent ultrasound, adding DBT might not provide much extra benefit and could increase recalls.
So the utility of DBT is context dependent. This brings us to ultrasound itself, which seems to be a major focus of research in Asia.
It's arguably the most important part of the discussion on supplemental screening. Given the density issue and the lower cost and wider availability of ultrasound, it's a natural candidate.
The paper highlights one trial in particular, the J-START trial in Japan.
That's the landmark study. It was a huge randomized controlled trial with nearly 73,000 asymptomatic women in their 40s. They were randomized to either mammography alone or mammography plus ultrasound.
What was the bottom line?
The combination of mammography and ultrasound had a significantly higher sensitivity, 91.1% versus 77% for the mammography alone group.
That's a big improvement, but what was the trade-off?
Specificity. It dropped from 91.4% in the mammography alone group to 87.7% in the combined group. So more cancers found, but also more false positives.
The classic screening dilemma. Did the addition of ultrasound find more clinically significant cancers?
It seems so. The combined screening group detected significantly more early-stage cancers, stage 0 and stage 1. And importantly, there were fewer interval cancers, which are cancers that appear between scheduled screenings.
So it was catching cancers that mammography was missing and catching them earlier. That's a strong argument in its favor, despite the lower specificity.
It is. The review also touches on studies looking at automated breast ultrasound, or ABUS, to reduce operator dependency.
What about ultrasound as a primary screening tool, not just a supplement, especially in places where mammography might not be accessible?
A very important question. The paper brings up a fascinating large-scale screening program in rural China that used an ultrasound-based, process-optimized approach.
How did that work?
Basically, all women received a primary screening with ultrasound. If a suspicious mass was found, they then underwent a double check with mammography. Biopsies were guided by the ultrasound findings.
And the performance?
In 2015, they screened over 1.5 million women this way. The recall rate was about 3%, and the positive predictive value of the biopsies was 37%.
37% is a respectable PPV for a screening program. That's compelling for resource-limited settings.
Exactly. It shows that an ultrasound-first pathway can be a viable strategy. Another study in China looking at primary screening with ABUS and remote reading found a cancer detection rate of 4.0 per 1,000, which is comparable to many mammography programs, and most of the cancers found were small and node negative.
Okay, so ultrasound is a powerful tool here, both as a supplement and potentially as a primary modality. What's the third option discussed for supplemental screening?
MRI. This is generally reserved for the highest risk women, those with known genetic mutations, a strong family history, or a personal history of breast cancer.
Because of cost and accessibility.
Right. Most Asian guidelines that mention it reserve it for high-risk groups. But the evidence for its effectiveness is strong. A prospective study in Japan involving BRCA mutation carriers found that MRI detected 2 cases of breast cancer for a 9% detection rate in that small, very high-risk cohort.
And in women who've already had breast cancer?
A multi-center study in South Korea looked at women under 50 who had been treated with breast conservation therapy. It found that adding MRI to mammography increased both sensitivity and the cancer detection rate.
But again, the cost and the time for a full protocol MRI are major barriers. Is there a workaround?
There is. The paper discusses abbreviated MRI protocols. These use fewer sequences to dramatically shorten the exam time.
Making it more feasible for screening. Has it been validated?
Yes, a study in South Korea showed that an abbreviated protocol had comparable sensitivity and superior specificity to a full protocol MRI for post-operative surveillance.
And the outcomes held up over time?
They did. A 3-year outcome analysis showed the performance of abbreviated MRI remained consistent, and the paper even points to non-contrast protocols like diffusion-weighted imaging as a potential future direction for a more cost-effective, patient-friendly option.
Okay, so we have this toolkit, DBT, ultrasound, MRI to supplement or even in some cases replace mammography, but the review makes it clear that technology is only part of the solution. There are bigger, systemic challenges.
Huge challenges. The paper lists them out. Limited resources, low public education and awareness, a shortage of trained professionals, and major socioeconomic inequalities between urban and rural populations.
The underutilization issue is striking. Even in high-income countries like Japan and Singapore with established programs, participation rates can be low.
It necessitates opportunistic screening to fill the gaps. But the paper offers a powerful case study in how to address some of these systemic issues. Taiwan's Cancer Screening Quality Improvement Program, or CAQIP.
What did that program do?
It was launched in 2010 with a specific aim to reduce socioeconomic gaps in mammography uptake. A key part of the strategy was a massive increase in the use of mobile mammography units.
And did it work?
The numbers are impressive. The use of mobile units went from just over 6% to nearly 33%. This made screening much more accessible to women in rural and suburban areas.
So it directly addressed the urban-rural divide, and it reduced inequality?
A nationwide study showed that disparities based on income and urbanization level declined significantly after the program was implemented. It's a great example of how policy and infrastructure can make a real difference.
Though the paper does note that disparities related to education level persisted, highlighting the need for targeted outreach.
A very fair point. No single intervention solves everything.
This all points to the final message of the review. What are the key future directions?
The authors distill it down to a few core ideas. First, and most importantly, breast cancer control strategies must be tailored to local epidemiology and resources. There is no global template that works everywhere.
That seems to be the central thesis. Stop applying Western models to Asian populations.
Precisely. The second point is the need to address the high incidence in younger women, specifically those in their 40s. The evidence for ultrasound screening in this group is strong and needs to be seriously considered.
But that comes with a call for stringent quality control.
Yes, robust quality assurance for technician training, equipment standards, and interpretation guidelines is essential if you're going to scale up ultrasound screening. You can't have high diagnostic accuracy without it.
And the final piece?
The need for robust local database systems. To make good policy, you need good data. Understanding regional disease patterns, patient characteristics, and screening outcomes is critical for developing effective region-specific guidelines.
It also lays the groundwork for future tools, like integrating AI to improve accuracy and efficiency.
Exactly. The whole review is a call for a more nuanced, data-driven, and localized approach to breast cancer screening in Asia.
Let's land this. The paper is a powerful synthesis of why context matters in medicine. Breast cancer in Asia presents earlier and with a higher mortality to incidence ratio, and is often masked on standard mammograms due to high breast density.
The evidence strongly supports a shift towards a tailored multimodal screening. Supplemental ultrasound in particular has proven effective at finding more early-stage cancers
in the high-risk 40 and 49 age group, though at the cost of higher recall rates.
And while advanced technologies like DBT and abbreviated MRI offer promise, the biggest gains may come from systemic solutions like improving access through programs like mobile screening and building the local data infrastructure needed to design smarter, more equitable health policies.
Well said. It's about matching the right tools to the right population.
That's all the time we have for today for SummaryCast.